Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 369. A Story That Can't Be Shared. Part 1. Anna Croft's expression hardened instantly and she sneakily pulled out her short sword behind her back. Conquering King. Completely disregarding her, Yu Jung-hyuk spoke while taking large strides to approach us. You two seem to be getting along nicely. Do you feel a sense of camaraderie from the fact that you both know about the future? But, you also know the information about the future, don't you? What I've experienced isn't the future. Dash. It's simply the things that had happened. It's the past. Things that had happened, he said. Yu Jung-hyuk had to live through the story that I read while welcoming thousands of deaths in the process. As if to respond to all those years he had spent, the dark heavenly demon sword, held in his hand, began to cry out viciously. Anna Croft snuck a glance in my direction. I replied to her. You should go. This guy came to see me, not you. I pray that I'll get to hear your end goal through your own words next time we meet. Leaving behind those words, she vanished through the portal without a trace. For sure, she had no reason to stay behind. She had paid her debt more than enough by assisting me this far, after all. Yu Jung-hyuk didn't try to stop her from leaving. If it was any other times, he'd doggedly pursue her and cut her head off, but not today. Yu Jung-hyuk, I called out to him. But, he didn't look at me. No, he simply stared at the empty, open mouth of the portal. So, I called out to him one more time. Please, at least listen to what I have to say. You used to call me your comrade, once upon a time, didn't you? He shifted his gaze towards me and slowly unsheathed his sword. That was in the past. The icy cold rage permeating within his voice wasn't something that I could readily unpack. Unique skill, the Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint has been activated. And so, I took yet another step into the curse of omniscience. Your degree of understanding on the applicable individual is lacking. Unfortunately, Yu Jung-hyuk's inner thoughts didn't permit my spying attempt, as if to assert that the person in front of my eyes was no longer the same guy that I knew all this time. I can already guess what you want to talk to me about. It's probably about that book of yours. Through that book, you peeked into my life and used me as your entertainment. Is there anything else I should know? I couldn't mouth any excuses. Because those were all truths. What I did was no different from what other constellations had been doing. I knew that. I definitely did. But, was the sense of betrayal everything he felt? Your degree of understanding on the applicable individual is increasing gradually, bit by bit. Yu Jung-hyuk was waiting for me, as if he was the judge searching for that yet undiscovered opportunity to frame me even further. Too bad, I had no idea what to say here. His emotions flooded into my head and filled it up to full in no time through the Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. All the texts that I knew were steadily being overwritten by the words completely foreign to me. The words that I should be saying, words that I wanted to say, they were all being buried under the blackened waves of emotions crashing in. And then, his sword moved. Even at that moment, it still didn't feel real to me. Indeed, it felt far too surreal that he'd forget about all those times we survived together and try to kill me right here. Fruit of good and evil is influencing your emotions. The fourth wall is shaking around violently. The moment I saw the blade flying in right in front of my nose, a guilty conscience, as well as a sense of unfairness, welled up in my heart. Fruit of good and evil is dragging out your dark emotions to the fore. I did my best in my own way. After these scenarios got underway, I really tried my best. In my own way, I did my best to put what I read to practice. I never once thought about hurting Yu Jung-hyuk or any of my companions. All I ever thought about was these scenarios. What should I do to minimize the harm? What should I do so that we could safely reach the true end of everything? That was all I did. Nothing more. Yet. Just what made things to go so wrong like this? Clong. Along with the explosive grinding noise, blue sparks danced in the air. Why are you standing around dazed like that, you dumbass? Han Suyang was standing next to me now. It was no coincidence that Han Suyang arrived on the middle island number 3. While progressing through the small island scenario, she had a certain dream. And it was about a man wearing a white coat dying at the hands of another man wearing a black coat. It was the same rubbish dream she had already a while ago, so she even muttered to herself, "It's that stupid dream again," while dreaming it. Because a dream would remain just that, a dream, and would never come to reality. Just like a novel could never become reality, that was. Looks like the me of the third turn is a bit of a moron, isn't she? I showed her the same image several times already, yet she doesn't seem to get it. What the heck was that? Han Suyang in the dream nearly jumped up in fright and shifted her gaze towards the voice. A woman wearing a black coat was standing there. This mysterious person possessed a similar physique to her. And as if someone deliberately erased her face, there were no distinguishing features at all. That blank face continued to speak. Looks like this regression will end up as a failure if this keeps up, huh? Han Suyang felt this instinctive fear and took a couple of steps back. Unfortunately, she was still inside her own dream, and no person alive could run away from their dreams. You see, me, I like throwing a wrench in someone else's schemes. The moment this woman of the dream extended her hand, strange, unexplainable information flooded into Han Suyang's head. Ability of predictive plagiarism is being awoken inside you. And that was how Han Suyang woke up from her sleep. Unknown information swam inside her head, and her consciousness moved on its own volition to sort through her newfound knowledge base. A short while later, this one sentence formed in her head. Yu Jung-hyuk will head towards the middle island number 3. She had no clue why such a sentence popped up in her mind. Even then, she decided to heed it. She didn't know what that unidentifiable dream was all about, or who that faceless woman within it was, but regardless, the thought of "I must do so" rang clearly in her head. And that was how she reached this very location, this very moment. Get out of my way. I have no business with you. Yu Jung-hyuk was glaring at her with a pair of frightening eyes. Meanwhile, Kim Dokja was staring at her with a dazed expression on his face. Han Suyang slowly sucked in her breath. She still didn't know what the dream was trying to show her. However, at least right in this moment, she knew what her role was. Han Suyang chuckled in her usual slimy manner and spoke up. I knew that you'd cause a problem sooner or later. There's no way the Yu Jung-hyuk I know would change like that. If you don't move out the way, then I... What, you want to kill me, too? And what would you gain by doing that? Is this the compensation for all those times you've been deceived? Yu Jung-hyuk didn't reply. Instead, his sword skill seemed to be forgotten for a moment there. His blade sliced down from the air and Han Suyang defended against the attack with a smirk. You and Kim Dokja are exactly the same when it comes to not listening to other people, you know. Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is roaring out in rage. The power of black flames, permeating within her entire figure, clashed against his sword swing. The weight behind Yu Jung-hyuk's sword strike, after being boosted by the second generation's power, was quite heavy. She bit her lip hard enough to draw blood as she unleashed all of her strength. He was indeed strong. However, it wasn't as if she was fooling around doing nothing up until now. Fable, disciple of the legendary swordmaster, is shining brightly. That was the fable she barely managed to earn by scraping and clawing her way through the scenario before coming here. The strength of a swordmaster swirled around her figure and explosively rose up within her. Suchachachuchit. In other places, it may not work, but if it was this place, then... When a person is saying something to you, the strengthened, black flame rushed towards Yu Jung-hyuk through the gaps of the dancing dark blue sparks. You should listen. The barrage of the strengthened flames rained down in sync with her words. Yu Jung-hyuk's eyes shook around, hard, at the unexpectedly robust resistance put up by her. She didn't miss that opening and loudly yelled out. All Kim Dokja did was read a novel. A stupidly long and boring novel. Seeing Yu Jung-hyuk get pushed back bit by bit, she thought that she could pull this off. This was not a tough dilemma to solve. This misunderstanding only came about because of people's words. That was why she believed that more words could resolve it once and for all. So, just talk to him, will ya? Speak to each other without holding back. Just like how everyone else does. The flames of Black Flame remained persistent and stuck onto Yu Jung-hyuk's blade. He coldly spoke as he shook off the darkish flames. You don't know anything. No, I know already, growled Han Soo-young, after hearing his words that cold-heartedly excluded her. What are you so pissed off about? About Kim Dokja approaching you while knowing everything about you? But, aren't you the same? Just like him, you acquired info for yourself and have deceived everyone else until now, haven't you? Perhaps those words became the seed, because rage began filling up Yu Jung-hyuk's eyes next. Their swords clashed in the air once more. Of course, I know that you were being sincere. I know that you did those things to save people, to reach an even better world. But what about Kim Dokja, then? Tell me, just which idiot would throw his life away because a character from a story is about to die? She saw Yu Jung-hyuk's blade freeze up for a moment there and continued to pour out her words. Did you forget what Kim Dokja has done until now? Just because he read that boring-ass novel a bit, you wish to pretend everything we experienced during your third regression didn't happen? Yu Jung-hyuk's status was shrinking back now. Han Soo-young could feel it, that she was almost there. Just one more push, and this unnecessary fight would come to an end. Calm down and think rationally about this. Unfortunately, Han Soo-young took a wrong step at the final hurdle. You are not that kind of a character. A character, is it? Yu Jung-hyuk's expression was changing back. He wasn't asking a question just now. She belatedly realized her mistake, but it was far too late to take back what she said by then. You're the same as him. Enormous waves of magical energy spread out from the contact point of the two locked blades. Han Soo-young's sword issued a cry of pain. The force behind Black Flames was now being pushed back one-sidedly. Fable, torch that swallowed the myth, is roaring out. The great fable Yu Jung-hyuk had acquired was now going on a rampage. I saw what you did during the 1863rd regression. 1863rd regression? What the hell are you? It was at that moment a certain something popped up in Han Soo-young's mind. In the 1863rd world line of ways of survival, right. You were there, too. I couldn't tell which one of you was the real body, though. For sure, Kim Dokja said something like that in the past. Can it be? Information in her head began consolidating. Apparently, she existed within the 1863rd turn. And in that place, she was living in a different regression. In that case, the person she saw in her dream was. Just as Han Soo-young reached her answer, a momentary opening was created. Yu Jung-hyuk's blade didn't miss that chance. Why couldn't I move? How come I didn't fight alongside Han Soo-young? While watching her speak for my stead, why couldn't I voice my own thoughts with her? You suck at telling your own story, that's why. I pulled the fallen Han Soo-young in as she looked up at me. Blood flowed out like a river from her waist. It was so vividly red that it all came across as far too unreal to my eyes. She was bleeding, yet she was still talking to me. Kim Dokja. I know the end you've been wishing for. She formed a smile as playful as ever. As if to wipe the blood on my cheek, she rubbed my face while murmuring back to me. What a pitiful guy you are. I frantically tried to stem her bleeding while pulling out my recovery items. Her internal injuries were too severe. She had been wounded far too mercilessly. Her innards were completely destroyed by the second-generation sword force. I could save her. If only I had a little more time, if I could just find a proper healer and get her healed, then. But, would I be allowed to do that? Her hand touching my cheek fell away lifelessly. I called out Han Soo-young's name. Over and over again. However, she didn't wake up. What I heard was Yu Jung-hyuk's voice, instead. Stand up, Kim Dokja. I couldn't sense any guilt, no shaken emotions within that voice. It was at that moment something inside me snapped. I slowly stood up from my spot. Yu Jung-hyuk. Fables were boiling over inside my head. There are some fables that are simply too big and are difficult to read properly. If your mind isn't centered right, you will end up getting swept away by the fable, instead. Yu Hosung told me that. I was aware of the dangers as well. The greater the fable, the larger the burden I had to carry. That was why I sought to make comrades. And we worked together to create history, to create our own fables. All for the sake of reaching a different conclusion than that of Yu Jung-hyuk's from the original storyline. That wish was what brought us this far. And the end result of that wish was this. Did I need to keep reading this story, then? Great fable, Demon World Spring, has begun its storytelling. I've imagined the final goal, where every one of us would be there together. I truly believed that such a story was definitely achievable. Great fable, Torch that swallowed the myth, has begun its storytelling. However, if that was impossible, then... If all the histories that I've created so far were completely useless, then... Demon King transformation has been activated. Then, the end I've been dreaming about no longer held any meaning. I shall kill you, Yu Jung-hyuk. Chapter 370. A story that can't be shared. Part 2. I shall kill you, Yu Jung-hyuk. Everyone within the library was looking at that text. Looks like all of us might end up perishing at this rate. The fourth wall is vibrating intensely. The entirety of the library was shaking around. The books that had been neatly arranged tumbled down and created a mess. However, no librarian tried to clean it up. How frustrating. Why aren't they communicating with each other? As I thought, these two lack enough desire to become one being. Our Suyang didn't do anything wrong, yet. The squid used one of its tentacles to lightly poke the round eye. Meanwhile, the text continued on. Every time Yu Jung-hyuk's and Kim Dokja's blades clashed against each other, Nirvana's teeth issued clattering noises. Oh aye, newbie. What do you think? When Yu Sang-ah heard that, she stopped catching the books flying over her head and looked back at the librarians. Her hand was full of Kim Dokja's memories, the book she'd been reading up until just now. I have two opinions about it. You have two of them? 1. Miss Suyang isn't dead. I know her very well, and she's not someone to risk her life for a problem like this one. The squid's tearful eyes opened much wider from her reply. What? But, you also read it, didn't you? Looks like you still don't know how it works. The heroine loses her consciousness, her hand falling away. And the male hero awakens. You see, in all the movies I've seen so far. Not minding what the squid or the simulation were saying, Yu Sang-ah composedly carried on. 2. They are currently talking to each other. Yu Sang-ah spoke as she stared at the texts that continued to pile up. Even though no one in this world would call that a conversation, but still. Fragments of fables poured out from the cracked arm. They were fables that we had created together. Fable, Demon World Spring, is pouring out its story. Fable, Torch that swallowed the myth, is growling threateningly. Like a dragon and tiger getting into a tussle, fables collided with other fables. Yu Jung-hyuk, possessing the exact same great fables as I, used the exact same power to fight me. Your share on the applicable fable is higher than your opponent's. Even though my share on the fables was supposedly higher, the shares held by Yu Jung-hyuk didn't listen to my commands. Maybe that was due to all those years Yu Jung-hyuk had gone through already. He had been telling his story far more fiercely than anyone else in Starstream, after all. Chachachachit. The probability of the second generation was suppressing us. However, some things still managed to escape its suppression. Fable, the one who opposes the miracle, is thunderously roaring out. Fable, the one who opposes the miracle, is bellowing out in anger. The exact same fables created by experiencing the same history collided against each other. Master of the island is paying close attention to you. Many constellations are watching your battle. Constellation, demon-like judge of flames, is. The voices of the constellations were getting fainter and fainter now. Unique skill, the fourth wall, is activating. We both swung our swords, fully prepared to kill each other in the process. The blade that I desperately swung brushed past Yu Junghyuk's waist, and his own blade attacking right back, stabbed into my shoulder. His combat intuition was higher, but my status was much higher than his. Great Fable, Demon World Spring, is protecting you. The Transcender's sharp aura pierced past the thick layer of status and flew straight in. From that sword energy, I was able to read his true intention. I saw how desperately he was standing his ground right now. He didn't bother to ask, and I didn't bother to reply. No, we just swung our swords again and again. And instead of our mouths, our fables told the tales for us. Fable, Paradise of Despair, is pouncing like a wild beast. The memories from the paradise. Fable, the one who hunted the King of Calamity, is roaring out. Traces from the Peaceland. Fable, Liberator of the Industrial Complex, is in mourning. The moments from the Revolution. None of those existed within the pages of the Ways of Survival. The times we've lived through didn't match up with any of the pages I read in the past. Angel transformation is activating. Wings broke past my shoulder blades. My status instantly increased and permeated into unbreakable faith. Issuing a loud, explosive noise, Yu Junghyuk's body flew up in the air after being unable to withstand the impact force. Come at me with everything you've got, Yu Junghyuk. Because I'll do the same, too. The light in his eyes changed. The outline of his status rising up around him began distorting visibly. It was powerful enough to twist the space itself. The true power of the high-level transcender was being unleashed for real now. Yu Junghyuk's figure, wrapped in the brilliant golden light, disappeared from my view. Second stage of the Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint is still in activation. His blade moved so fast that my eyes couldn't even follow it. Clong! One sword against another. The louder the grinding metallic noises became, the heavier my wrist got. Fables poured out from my thigh, and fables flowed out from Yu Junghyuk's shoulders. And naturally, his voice could also be heard. The fourth wall is activating strongly as if to fight back. Yu Junghyuk had begun telling his story now. You. I tried to guess which words would follow that. Without a doubt, he'd blame me. Just as Han Suyang had said, you were that kind of a person, after all. Why did you choose to remain in that particular turn? Memories of the 1863rd regression brushed past my head. I won't return to the third turn. I'll remain here and see this thing to its end with the people of this place. The decision I made was coming back to me in full. The unbreakable faith was now issuing cracking, breaking noises. Back then, that was the best choice available. I thought that, after witnessing the end of the 1863rd turn, I would be able to return to the third turn safely. That was why I tried to find the story where everyone could be happy. However, what if Yu Junghyuk of the 1863rd turn didn't help me out back then? What if Han Suyang of the 1863rd turn carried murderous intentions towards me? Would I have been able to return to this world unscathed? Even though I thought that I knew the scenarios better than anyone, could it be that I just got lucky and managed to survive until now? Your comrades are here. Yu Junghyuk's first sword slash sliced apart my shoulder. And your own world line was here. His second strike split open my elbow. You told people to live their lives in this world. The third strike punctured a hole in my wing. It hurt like hell. But what hurt even more than that, though, was the rage and disappointment contained within Yu Junghyuk's voice. Incarnation Yu Junghyuk is refusing to regress. Yu Junghyuk, who gave up on the path of regression and decided to live out his third turn because of me, was now looking back. The being who loved this world more than anyone, and wanted to protect it because of that, was staring straight back at me. But then, you. Certain types of rage and some types of betrayal couldn't be described in mere words. No matter how omniscient one was as a reader, one would never be able to read them. Yu Hosong said as thus. A fable may not look all that amazing at first glance, but it'll present a maze-like abyss to all those who dare to peek deeper into their inner core. It's the same story, regardless of how small a fable is. What I was seeing shouldn't be Yu Junghyuk's everything. I'd never get to fully understand the reason why he was so furious like this. Because everything could be his reason, or conversely, nothing could be his reason, too. But one thing was for certain, and that would be Yu Junghyuk had decided not to be under the thumb of anyone anymore. Not controlled by me, and not controlled by himself. And maybe not even by those D*MN constellations who should be watching right us now. Answer me, Kim Dokja. While receiving the outpouring of the sword strikes, I began faltering. Most likely, Yu Junghyuk was aware of the truth, that I was still reading him even right now. But, even though he knew that I was reading him, he continued to think non-stop. Answer me. Just like how I observed him past this wall, he too was ceaselessly writing something just beyond it, hoping that someone would get to read it sooner or later. Unfortunately, I couldn't reply. Because, if I do, then the fourth wall is getting thicker. Then, you'd end up becoming a mere character of the story. The fourth wall is getting even thicker. Because, you definitely couldn't become a mere character. Kugugugugu. Yu Junghyuk glared at me with his trademark blazing eyes. Here he was, existing in this place and time, destroying me in order to prove that he wasn't just a mere character of a story. Is that so? His words floated up above the wall. So, that is your choice. The fourth wall is getting even thicker. Even during this regression, I didn't have any comrades, then. If I were to say something, anything, as a reply, it was possible that he'd have forgiven me. Maybe, a miracle might happen and he'd accept me, even. However, even if that happened, Han Suyong wouldn't return, and the hurt we inflicted on each other would not be erased either. We would never become comrades ever again. Whether it was Yu Junghyuk or me, we both knew that truth all too painfully well. The fourth wall is getting even thicker. And that was why we held our swords as we dashed towards each other. The fourth wall is getting even thicker. The full-on attack collided with another full-on attack and issued a loud, explosive noise. Thick, choking dust was kicked up in the air. Neither of us could withstand the impact force and crumbled to the ground. The first one to stand back up was me. I staggered towards Yu Junghyuk lying on his back, his entire body now looking like a torn rag, and pointed my blade at him. He didn't offer any resistance, but instead, looked up at me to speak. I persisted with this regression for far too long. So, end this. Yu Junghyuk murdered Han Suyong. He had already crossed the line that shouldn't have been crossed. The sword aura of the unbreakable faith trembled noticeably. And the moment I raised my sword up high, I recalled what Han Suyong of the 1863rd turn told me. If my novel was a rip-off of Ways of Survival, then whose rip-off are you? The answer to that question was right in front of my eyes now. Kim Dokja had learned how to live from this man. This man was my father, my brother, and my oldest friend. The fourth wall has increased its thickness. For a long time, I had been looking at him through this thick wall. I was saved by him many times, and while looking at his story, I managed to survive. The unbreakable faith slowly clattered back on the ground. I couldn't kill this guy. Nor could I beg for his forgiveness either. I had never learned to be that cowardly. No, I was taught to pay the price for the things I'd done. Yu Junghyuk was still looking up at me. And I too, stared back at him. I'm right here, in this place. I know. Even then, you only chose to read and nothing else. Because, that is our way of living. You acted, and I read you doing it. If you're unwilling, then I shall do it myself. Yu Jung-hyuk slowly got back up and grasped his blade tightly. I thought I could hear the sound of a story coming to an end. The mass production type maker once told me this, that a certain fable would end without ever getting closer to the. However, if this place was the end point for all the stories, and if I was destined to die right here, then wouldn't it be fine to at least say one thing? Hey, Yu Jung-hyuk. He stopped his actions when I spoke up. You probably know this already, but I'm not a prophet. No, I am as far removed from such a being as you can get. Ever since we got into a tussle back on the Dongo Bridge, I had never introduced myself properly once. To Yu Jung-hyuk, I was the prophet, a man with a mysterious background. I'm not the Demon King of Salvation. Fable, Demon King of Salvation, has stopped its storytelling. I'm also not the king of a kingless world. Fable, King of a Kingless World, has stopped its storytelling. One by one, my fables stopped their stories. Excluding my own, everything else became dead still. My name is Kim Dokja. The wings on my back disappeared, and the ballooned-up muscles shrunk back, too. 28. No, wait. I was 28, and I was an employee of a game company. My hobby was reading web novels. As if I was talking to someone I met for the first time, I continued to tell my own story. It's pathetic, right? Well, this is who I am. Yu Jung-hyuk, who are you? To me, Yu Jung-hyuk was someone I knew from a long time ago. To be more specific, he was someone I read about all by myself. That was why I had never heard about his story in his own words. He finally opened his mouth. I am Yu Jung-hyuk. His blade slowly moved and cut me down. Yu Jung-hyuk, a former regressor. Chapter 371. A story that can't be shared. Part 3. As soon as she opened her eyes, Han Soo-young spat out a mouthful of blood. Only after the black-colored blood filled up the ground in a rather large quantity did she finally regain her wits. The first thing she saw was the dense forest. It wasn't the location where she'd been fighting against Yu Jung-hyuk just now. I really almost died back there. Yu Jung-hyuk, you son of a bitch. If she hadn't transferred her memories to a dummy avatar on standby at the very last moment, she'd have died for real. You have exhausted today's allotment for the authorization of memory transfer. From now on, the applicable avatar will act as your true body. She'd been expecting something like this to happen. Fable, Predictive Plagiarism, is hesitantly carrying on with its storytelling. Han Soo-young got to clearly witness several scenes through this fable called Predictive Plagiarism, the one she earned after experiencing that mysterious dream. Such as, the various futures that would change according to the choices she'd make, Kim Dokja's death, or maybe, even Yu Jung-hyuk's death. And then, the sole future where both of those terrible choices could be avoided altogether. Due to the penalty of memory transfer, your physical abilities will be weakened significantly. I swear, if either one of them is dead, then I. Han Soo-young complained unhappily to herself and tried to sense the waves of magical energy from the surroundings. She still needed to locate the direction where those two were. Not too long afterwards, her senses picked up on two rather enormous statuses. She quickly ran in that direction. Out of all the futures she read, this was the only one that worked out fine. Kim Dokja didn't die, and for the first time ever, those two idiots would get to share a proper conversation. That's what Han Soo-young's predictive plagiarism had predicted, and that was why she didn't try to dodge Yu Jung-hyuk's sword at the last second. So, Kim Dokja should definitely be alive. It was around here that she heard the sound of a sword clashing against something else. Are they still fighting? These idiots, I even died so that you two could talk to each other, but this. She figured that she really needed to give these two men a harsh earful when she arrived there. But, when she pushed past the bushes and stepped forward, the ensuing spectacle freaked her out in a rather grand manner. Kwang! Bang! Yu Jung-hyuk was mercilessly slamming his sword down on Kim Dokja, currently sprawled out on the ground. Hey! You crazy son of a bitch! I guess it didn't work. Yu Jung-hyuk observed Kim Dokja lying on the ground. On the chest of the unconscious man, the shallow wound left behind by his dark heavenly demon sword was clearly visible. But, I thought I saw it just now. Yu Jung-hyuk grasped his sword tightly and focused his mind. And almost right away, he sensed the dark aura oozing out from Kim Dokja's body. That was the wall, the identity of the strange foreignness he felt whenever he was looking at Kim Dokja. I can see it. He could see a jet black wall, composed of countless texts. He raised his sword high up and powerfully smashed down on that wall again. Now that a transcender began pounding on it with serious intent, the wall started shaking around in an unstable manner. The fourth wall is glaring at you. Not caring whether it was glaring or not, Yu Jung-hyuk continued to pound on that wall. Beyond this wall, there might be. If it didn't want to open up, then until it did, if it couldn't be broken, then until he broke it down. Again, and again. But then. Hey, you crazy bastard! Have you lost your mind? Accompanied by a shrill voice, he felt a rather powerful impact in the back of his head. Blood trickled down and blocked his vision. Through all that red, he saw Han Soo-young kneeling down next to Kim Dokja. Hey, Kim Dokja. Get a hold of yourself. Wake you. What the heck? He isn't dead? Yu Jung-hyuk scowled unhappily as he staggered on his feet. Han Soo-young. Do you really wish to die today? You already killed me once today, you bastard. I knew you wouldn't die from the beginning. Stop lying. My acting was beyond perfect, you know. She growled angrily and pointed at her incarnation body, which was her real body only until a few minutes ago, still lying on some forgotten corner over yonder. The incarnation body, currently crumbling away, showed the definite signs of bleeding out. An avatar wouldn't have bled anything in the first place. Yu Jung-hyuk spoke nonchalantly. An avatar would bleed like the real body if it was imbued with a certain amount of memories. Oh my? And how did you even find that out? From the record you wrote yourself. Specifically, you from the 1863rd turn, that is. Me of that turn wrote all sorts of crap, didn't I? God damn it. There were plenty of things she wanted to ask, but she chose not to. Instead, she poked Kim Dokja's cheek and spoke up. Still, this guy looks like he got completely fooled, doesn't he? Looks that way. How did it go? He went crazy and attacked me. Han Soo-young smirked and lightly pinched Kim Dokja's cheek as if she was proud of him. By the way, what's the matter with his chest? He's paying for making me eat dirt. Dirt? There is something like that. She shifted her gaze back to Kim Dokja and his cheek that sagged without any energy. In all honesty, he was only just barely alive, and not one part of his body could be described as okay. Indeed, the surrounding forest had been completely leveled by the battle just now, so it'd be far stranger if his body was left largely unscathed. Han Soo-young understood that this scene of utter destruction was the direct evidence of the conversation that took place between Kim Dokja and Yu Jung-hyuk. So? Did you hear the answer you wanted? Yu Jung-hyuk paused for a moment before making his reply. A little. She could clearly read the depths of emotions contained in that simple reply of a little. But they belonged to Kim Dokja and Yu Jung-hyuk and no one else. That left her feeling just a bit rueful, a bit lonesome. Anyways. You are coming back to Kim Dokja's company now, right? Yu Jung-hyuk mulled over for a while, but then, turned around to leave as if he had said everything there was to say. She frowned deeply. Hey, you. At least try to answer properly, will you? I even helped you out, didn't I? The Great War of Saints and Demons is just around the corner. Yu Jung-hyuk continued to walk further away. 1 step, 2 steps. Just as Han Soo-young was getting ready to shout out something else. Su-cha-cha-chat. Sparks buzzed around Kim Dokja's body and a voice suddenly came out from him. Yu Jung-hyuk SSI, that stupid scenario isn't the most important thing, you know. Startled by this development, Yu Jung-hyuk quickly unsheathed his blade. The imaginary wall enveloping Kim Dokja was actually moving. Past that wall, someone was speaking to him. Do you believe that it's the end when you leave after talking one-sidedly like this? No, to be more specific, it wasn't the wall, but rather. You should experience it as well, what the feelings of being a reader are all about. To understand what it really is. Suchachachuchit. The wall that didn't want to break no matter how many times he hit it suddenly developed a small hole on the side, and a hand popped out from this mysterious hole. That hand proceeded to lightly grasp Yu Jung-hyuk's head and then slammed it right against the wall. I was lying in pitch-black darkness by the time I regained my consciousness. What happened? Did I die? By Yu Jung-hyuk? As the thoughts continued to swirl in my head, I slowly stood back up. I looked around but couldn't see anything. It was then, a bright light from a lantern lit up in front of my eyes. Dokja SSI, so this was where you've been all this time. Is that you, Sang SSI? Are you alright? Where am I? You're inside the library. Only then did I figure out what had happened. Most likely, I got sucked inside the fourth wall as I blacked out again. By the way, is it always this dark inside? No, it's just that the library is in a state of chaos at the moment, you see. The aftershocks of the battle this time killed off all the lanterns inside, and all the bookshelves have fallen down. Everyone is doing their best trying to restore everything right now. My apologies. I have created a lot of trouble for you. Yu Sang-ah grinned softly and shook her head. No, not at all. Is there anything I can do to help? Oh, no. It's fine. You should lay here and rest. I'll sit here and take a short break, as well. Yu Sang-ah let out a grunt and lightly settled down next to me. Her face, as illuminated by the dim light of the lantern, was the exact same one from my memories. You really did well. In regards to? When you said those things. I didn't need a lot of time to figure out what she meant by those words. No doubt, she would have borne witness to the spectacle of the outside from behind the fourth wall. A proper relationship starts from the act of introducing oneself first, doesn't it? It's possible that you two might become real friends this time. That would be great if such a thing was possible, but I wasn't expecting much, though. Honestly, I thought that it'd be a huge relief with Yu Jung-hyuk's anger being soothed, somehow. No matter what I said, it'd be quite impossible to soften the sense of betrayal he must have felt. Books discarded on the floor seemed to be rolling around everywhere. Without thinking too much about it, I picked one up. Kim Dokja, Records from 15 Years Old, Volume #25. I sneakily closed the book and chucked the damn thing deep into the darkness. Excuse me, Dokja SSI? Yes? Actually, well, I read that book. Just a little bit. How much did you read? Almost the whole book, if I'm honest. I find these more interesting than the ways of survival, you see. I'm sorry. My face reddened from heat, but there was naught that could be done when she had already read it. It's fine. I do feel a bit ashamed, but still. I did think that, with Yu Sang-ah being a part of the library, such memories would possibly end up being exposed, anyway. She carefully picked up the books rolling around on the floor, one by one, and dusted them before gathering them all together. They were all my memories. Her expression, as dyed by the darkness, was hard to see, but I could nevertheless sense how troubled she was feeling right now. Perhaps to console her, I picked up one of the books she had been gathering. Been a while, this thing. All these gathered books were my stories. Kim Dokja, 15 years old. 18 years old. 23, 28. I slowly flipped through the pages. Kim Dokja, who didn't have a father. Kim Dokja, who didn't have any friends. Kim Dokja, who lost his mother. It was a life that always lacked something, or something kept disappearing from it. A lone existence is a being that doesn't exist. Kim Dokja was always alone. And that was why he was the only child, Dokja, and the Kim Dokja didn't exist. What sorrowfully reasonable words those were. However, there was a sole moment where that Kim Dokja did exist. That was when the Dokja, only child / became the Dokja, reader. A life story being told like a lengthy report on a single book. That was basically my life in a nutshell. I spent my teenage years along with the ways of survival, and hid behind the wall this story created for me to dodge the pointed fingers of other people. At last, he'd come to life only when reading The Way of Survival. I sensed Yu Sang-ah's gaze, staring at me from my side. I wasn't sure why, but it also felt like it wasn't her alone. Maybe other librarians were also watching me from somewhere within the darkness. It was right then, an unexpected text caught my eyes within the opened page. I met a strange person today during the interview. That person's name is Yu Sang-ah. The moment I read that, I unknowingly closed the book shut. Could it be that Yu Sang-ah SSI also read this part? Haven't you ever wondered about this before, Dokja SSI? Excuse me? About what? What if scenarios didn't start? What would have happened to us? I hadn't thought about that. What if the ways of survival didn't become reality back then? What if the novel Ways of Survival came to its natural conclusion and time continued to tick by? What would have happened to me? Would I still be alive? Could I have been able to carry on? Would we be still working for the same company as before? Well, my contract hadn't been extended, so I guess I might have been searching for a job in other companies. Right, I wouldn't have died that easily. I would have thought about dying every now and then, and also, there could have been many a day when I fell asleep while rereading The Ways of Survival, but yeah, I wouldn't have died. Not that easily. I'd have continued to live on, somehow. In that world, I wouldn't have become a friend with you, Yu Sang-ah SSI. My workplace would have changed, and we wouldn't have a reason to get in contact with each other, after all. Even still, wouldn't we have tried to call each other sometimes? Well, I think we would have. I'm sure that, even after you left the company, I'd keep on remembering you. You are a strange person, after all. Are you trying to get back at me? Yu Sang-ah formed a refreshing grin and carried on. I'd probably have gotten curious about your welfare. Is he doing okay? He's not sick, is he? Did he find a new job? What about marriage? I don't think I'd have gotten married. I couldn't even take care of myself properly back then. Well, it's true that one doesn't have to get married. I also found it easier to live alone, you see. Even you, Sang-ah SSI? Yes. See, I told you. We'd have been good friends, I think. You really think so? Yes, of course. We'd study Spanish together, enter a writers' club and ride bicycles together, too. Or, to get ready for our old age, we start recommending savings plan or retirement funds. After we grow old and can't move anymore, we'd help each other to get to hospitals. I guess we could have lived pretty close by, in that case. Of course. Maybe, we might have lived right next to each other. We continued to chat away. We talked about things that could no longer be. Things that could never become a reality. Just like how The Ways of Survival was to me once upon a time. Yu Sang-ah continued on. Along with Hui-1 SSI, Hyeon-sung SSI, and Ji-hai, too. It'd be wonderful if other kids also lived nearby. Even Suyang SSI, too. Even if such a world did really exist, it was not possible that all of them could be together. Because they were characters from a novel. They were. Yes, it'd be really wonderful if that was true. Ah, Jung Hyuk SSI, as well. Although his personality is terrible, he's a great cook, so I think it'll be nice to become his friend. Without a warning, something welled up from deep inside my heart. Hui-1 SSI and Hyeon-sung SSI would be. Fu in any case. And so we'd all be growing older, little by little. In a world without scenarios, no constellations, and no dakibis. Where we'd meet up to share our stories, and while sharing nice foods. I recalled the countless world lines that I witnessed together with the secretive plotter. Among all those possible worlds, maybe, just maybe, one of them could. It had been nice if such a world existed somewhere. Don't you agree? There might be one just like that, somewhere. Dokja SSI. Yes? I really enjoyed being with you, Dokja SSI. I think it's time for me to go now. You sang SSI. Actually, I had realized it a little while ago, why she suddenly began talking to me about such things. Master of the island is calling out to incarnation, you sang a. By seizing the opening created by the weakening of the fourth wall, the master of these islands was calling out to you sang a. The king of the reincarnators. Finally, the moment we'd been waiting for had come. Indeed, one of the reasons why we decided to come to the Isle of Reincarnators was here. This library, it's a warm and cozy and nice place to be, but I can't remain here forever, you know. But, hang on for a second, Sanga SSI. You don't have to be in such a hurry to. Yu Sanga shook her head. Just like me, she too had read The Ways of Survival by now. What I wanted to say, she already knew them all. There is almost nothing that I can do in here. As long as I'm here, I'll always remain as a simple reader. I looked up at her with a resolute expression, my lips firmly shut. I wanted to stop her. I wanted to ask if it'd be fine for us to talk for a bit longer. Unfortunately, I couldn't. Dokja SSI, you told me this once before that you have only one turn, and that the world we need to live in is this one. That's why. I'll say it like this. White light enveloped you sang as she placed her hand on my head, a smile forming on her lips. Let's meet again in the next life. Chapter 372. A story that can't be shared. Part 4. As I slowly regained my consciousness, I decided to activate Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. So, the method to clear the middle island number 4 is. After managing to master the Fable control, Zhang Huiwen had finally entered the Middle Island scenario and began massacring other participants. I dunno. Well, if they come at me, I'll just kill them all. Our general is also a Fable grade, you know? Don't you look down on us. Zhang Huiwen activated Hour of Judgment, while Ijihai activated Demon Slaying. As they ran amok in their battlefield, around the same time, the kids began clearing the Middle Island scenario in their own clever way. I've tamed the invisible wisp. Let's steal that person's modifier using this guy. But, we can just send insects over there, though? What a crafty method of clearing the scenario. So much so that I didn't need to help them out at all. Kuyuk, Kuhuk, groan. Ihyensong found himself alone on a different middle island and was being severely beaten up by other constellations and incarnations. He was in a fetal position while glaring at his enemies with sorrowful eyes, but then, he suddenly roared out like a huge bear. The one thing sadder than ending up all alone, is to get beaten up all by yourself. Powerful rays of light exploded out from Ihyensong's body, causing the participants around him to explode en masse. I was familiar with that technique. That was one of the special techniques possessed by the Master of Steel, Impact Release, that released all the accumulated damage at once. As expected, the folks from the original storyline were truly cheat characters. In any case, I got to clearly see that Ihyensong had become stronger as well. Character Zhang Haiyang has activated Breaking the Skyforce Punch. As for Zhang Haiyang, she was clearing the scenario while displaying overwhelming strength. To me, she seemed to be on the path to truly becoming the master of the wall she possessed. Well, she was a talented person from the get-go, and was also capable of absorbing the techniques of others rather quickly, as well. Unidentifiable Wall is evolving. Her wall had become far more stabilized compared to before. She could chat to other transcenders through her wall, and got to learn and understand their abilities. In a way, one could say there were some similarities between her method and me reading the book. Unidentifiable Wall has sensed your presence. My view was instantly filled with white noise. Unidentifiable wall is staring at the fourth wall. The fourth wall is staring at unidentifiable wall. The moment these two walls stared at each other, my view suddenly grew fuzzy, blurry. The end of the world line is approaching. As my view crumbled away, I could hear an unknown voice. Kim Dokja, they shall come to find you. VRR. The moment I regained my consciousness, I felt my smartphone vibrate. I switched the screen on without thinking too much about it, only to spot today's date. February 15, th. As we weren't on Earth, the local weather report didn't appear. All I could confirm was the date. Even then, I couldn't say it was an accurate one either. The space-time indicator had long lost its meaning after I moved around different dimensions willy-nilly, after all. Everyone within Star Stream lived in a different time from the others. That was the case, but now. 15th of February, is it? I fell into a bit of thought regarding this date, before giving up and placed the phone down. My head was in a disorganized mess, and almost every part of my incarnation body was aching painfully, too. I blinked several times while looking down at my upper torso to find bandages tightly wrapped around my chest area. Where am I now? The surroundings slowly filled my view. Firstly, the clean, white bedsheets, followed by the elegant oriental decor of the room I was in. A certain someone leaning against the window and looking outside threw a question at me. You awake now? You. Her eyes arched in a mischievous manner. Ah, so this is how it feels like coming back to life after dying. But, didn't you die? I did? Seeing Han Soo-young snicker like that, the inside of my head grew even more complicated. I immediately recalled the sight just before blacking out, the events of her dying at Yu Jung-hyuk's sword, me fighting against him, and then, passing out from his attack, and finally, sharing a conversation with Yu Sang-na inside the library. Han Soo-young approached the bed before I noticed it and pinched my cheek. In any case, Kim Dokja. You can be really adorable sometimes. Only then did I realize that she played me for a sucker. I took a closer look and found a small 4-needle stuck in her arm, too. Where are we? The waiting room of the main island. The place where that guy and his castle is. It was then, I abruptly remembered something else. Master of the island is calling out to Incarnation Yu Sang-na. Back then when that guy was taking Yu Sang-na away, there was another message popping up in front of my eyes, as well. Master of the island is inviting you. The King of Reincarnators. The third protagonist of the book 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World had summoned us to their territory. But, I'm pretty sure that I failed to clear the scenario. Don't I need to clear the Middle Island scenario in order to get here, so how? Nope, you did clear it. I quickly confirmed the message logs. You have cleared hidden scenario, snatching modifiers. Reward handout is currently on standby. It's true. But, how? I hadn't collected the syllable vil, so how? Han Soo-young wordlessly pointed at the necklace hanging around my neck. Devil of lust and wrath. The completed necklace of modifier was emitting a soft glow. Something like this couldn't happen, though. One of the syllables should have been missing on my necklace. Han Soo-young spoke. Yu Jung-hyuk gave it to you before leaving, saying that it's a leftover. Yu Jung-hyuk did? But, why? My thoughts were getting messy again. The things he said at the final moments rang vividly in my head. Yu Jung-hyuk, a former regressor. Not the regressor Yu Jung-hyuk, but a former regressor. What was he thinking about when he told me that? Where is he now? The next scenario. The sense of emptiness and relief brushed past me simultaneously when I heard her. He again went ahead before everyone in order to clear the scenario. Who was his target, anyway? You just woke up, but you're already so full of questions. How annoying. I sat on the bed, eyes blinking like an idiot. She pointed to my chest again. Upon taking a closer look, there were 2 modifier necklaces hanging around my neck. One of Then was Asmodeus's modifier, devil of lust and wrath, while the other one was of. The places where my modifier should have been were replaced by empty holes instead. No way? Yes, way. Well, at least he did leave behind of. That son of a bitch. It's my turn to ask questions now. Is Yu Seng-ah still inside you? King of Reincarnators already took her. Did she say anything else before going? I unsteadily rose up from the bed and walked over to the window. While standing next to Han Suyang, I stared at the unfolding cityscape. Reincarnators were busy roaming the streets that possessed the unmistakable ancient Chinese vibe. Beings from other worlds were here, beings that had chosen to live a new life in this place, along with different names and different faces. She said, "Let's meet again in the next life." To me, it'd still be this life, but to Yu Seng-ah, it'd indeed be the next life. She'd earn a new body, a new life, through the power of the King of Reincarnators. She'd get to live a new life in this world, in other words. Han Suyang and I stared at the streets below without saying anything. It was as if we were searching for Yu Seng-ah hiding somewhere within these nameless streets. Han Suyang abruptly opened her lips to speak. "It's snowing." She was right, bits of snowflakes were descending from the sky. Originally, this particular world didn't have any snow. Yet, it was doing precisely that. Snow fell like starlight. And beyond the tall skies where snowflakes continued to fall, constellations were watching my tail. No indirect messages reached me, but I could still feel that they were looking at me. Probability they had gathered bit by bit until now was scattering gently in the skies. I turned my head to the side to find Han Suyang studying me. She grasped my modifier necklace and grinned. "I guess you're no longer the Demon King of Salvation. Shouldn't you get yourself a brand new modifier now?" I began recalling the days I spent as Demon King of Salvation while listening to her talk. It hadn't been that long, but those days were the most brilliant moments in my life. As my vision grew wetter and blurrier, I could see Han Suyang giggling away. "Should I make one up for you, then?" What will sound nice on you, I wonder? How about I pass out too often, man? Or, miraculous pie hole? Eh? Hey, you are crying? My face was reflected in her irises, her eyes widening in surprise. Actually, I wanted to ask her, an author. As she was a writer, maybe she'd be able to tell me straight. Tell me that I did good until now, whether I made the wrong choices or not, whether I would get to see the desired conclusion when I reached the end of this story or not. Hey, why are you crying like that? I get it, okay? I get it, so stop. There. She must have thought up something, as she began rummaging through her pockets next. Soon afterwards, something sweet and slightly sour entered my mouth. Why are you crying on a nice day like today? I mean, it's even snowing, too. I promise to think up a nice modifier later on, okay? Said Han Suyang, before avoiding my gaze to stare into the far-off distance. Today was the 15th of February. That's what the smartphone said. However, the time of this place and that of Earth weren't the same, therefore this indicator was simply an error. It was a coincidental date, with no meaning behind it. Even then, what if there was some kind of a miracle and this date was indeed true? Then, today would be my birthday. Han Suyang rubbed her eyes as she spoke. I want to see the others already. I summoned up every ounce of my strength to make my reply. Yeah, me too. As if those words became the signal. Revised text has completed its update. A gift sent by someone arrived at my doorstep. 3 ways to survive in a ruined world, final revision, .txt. Inside the scattering, falling snow, Yu Jung-hyuk was staring at the castle of reincarnators. Most likely, Kim Dokja had regained his consciousness by now. And Yu Seng-ah would be in the middle of reincarnation, having met the master of the island already. That woman. A deep frown crept up on Yu Jung-hyuk's face. He'd never be able to forget the moment when his head rammed into that mysterious wall a few days ago. He got to forcibly observe that wall's insides amidst the horrifying storm of probability sparks. And that was where he bore witness to fragments of a tale he didn't know before. Some of them were as per his expectations, while some of them were definitely news to him. Some of them even took him completely by surprise, too. It all happened for an instant, but he found the information he'd been searching for from that wall, as well as the answers he wanted to find. And now, he realized that it was time to put to practice the answers he found. Secretive plotter. He raised his head to greet the gaze of a certain scheming constellation. Constellation, secretive plotter, is looking at you. The secretive plotter, the constellation that made its first appearance in this regression. And an unidentified existence whose information or evidence couldn't be found in any of the 1863 worlds. Constellation, secretive plotter, is looking at you. Haven't I played along with your schemes long enough now? I'm sure that I have the right to ask you a single question or two. The secretive plotter didn't reply for a brief moment. But then, a portion of the sky suddenly became dyed in darkness, and a ray of black light fell towards Yu Jung-hyuk. Suchachachuchit. As the sparks from probability crackled all around him, the spacetime within the near vicinity began distorting noticeably. He was currently in the world ruled by the master of the island. No top-ranked constellation would be able to exert that much probability in this place. Yet, the secretive plotter was an existence who could do exactly that. A pitch-black shadow rose up within the darkness. What are you curious about, oh, the puppet of the most ancient dream? Why did you show me that book? The shadow of the secretive plotter wavered about as if to mock him. Yu Jung-hyuk continued with his questioning. Did you want me to fall into despair? You wanted me to kill Kim Dokja after reading that book? Maybe. Maybe not. Why did you plot something like that? You think you can understand it after hearing the answer? Its arrogant voice was filled with the confidence of knowing that a lowly being like him would never understand, even after hearing the truth. Yu Jung-hyuk asked another question. Why did you send Kim Dokja to the 1863rd turn? Why did you order him to kill me there? Let's just say that such a scenario would have been fun to observe. The shadow wavered around as if it was cackling. Yu Jung-hyuk remained calm and spoke his piece. All of your schemes were to destroy Kim Dokja. Why do you think that? Do you have any reasons to believe that's the case? Maybe I do. Maybe I do have a pretty good reason. This constellation, holding a mysterious animosity towards Kim Dokja, and at the same time, didn't exist in the original work, just like him. Yu Jung-hyuk had been chasing after this constellation for a long time. And he had finally reached the answer to his pursuit in this very moment. Secretive plotter. Are you the Kim Dokja from the future?